Welcome back to the Weekend Primetime. We start with breaking news in Donald Trump's war with Iran, a war he says he's resolving in one breath before he begins to escalate in the next. U.S. Central Command releasing this dramatic new video of a U.S. Navy destroyer firing on and intercepting an Iranian-flagged cargo ship. Trump posting online that the destroyer blew a hole in the Iranian ship after it didn't stop, and that Marines are now in custody of it. That major escalation came literally just hours after Trump claimed more talks with Iran were set to happen tomorrow in Pakistan, writing, quote, "We're offering a very fair and reasonable deal, and I hope that they take it, because if they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. No more Mr. Nice Guy." Never mind that Iranian state media tweeted that reports of second talks are actually false. MS Now has not independently confirmed that. It's all leading up to growing impatience among Republicans on Capitol Hill all over this war. Senators Susan Collins and Thom Tillis are now signaling more willingness to curb Trump's war powers if the conflict exceeds 60 days. Here's Senator Collins on Friday.
It is very likely that I would vote not to authorize further hostilities.
Is that because that would just be, you want to see a finite operation? And
well, I've always wanted this operation to be brief but successful.
And joining us now is Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton from Massachusetts. He serves on the Armed Services Committee. He's also running for Senate right now. Congressman, good to have you back on the show. So, Thank you. Look, I just played some of Senator Collins there, and I'm sure some of our viewers right now are like, look, we've heard Senator Collins say that she's concerned about things in the past, and then, she doesn't ultimately do very much. But do you think, just given the political headwinds, the challenges domestically that this party, the Republicans, they are facing, that there is a chance that some of them may actually stand up to Trump on this?
Well, you'd like to think that the Republicans actually cared about the Constitution. You'd like to think they cared about the rule of law. You'd like to think they cared about our troops, 13 of whom are already dead because of this war of choice that Trump is losing. But the reality is, you're right. They probably only care about the poll numbers. And luckily for the troops and the Constitution, the polls are against this war. So hopefully they'll wake up and actually do the work of the American people and try to get the president to stop it. But it's kind of amazing that her attitude is essentially like, I don't really care if he violated the Constitution. I don't really care if he broke the law. We can give him 60 days to do that, but we can't give him more.
Congressman, what do you make of Trump's "no more nice guy" tweet today? It seems lost on this administration. Even Mike Waltz, came out and said that this is not a war crime. Threats of bombing power plants and bridges are not war crimes. And it seems like Trump is either a war criminal or he's threatening to be a war criminal if he does this. But how do you read his threats? A negotiating tactic or an unhinged president?
I have no idea. He sounds pretty unhinged. Of course, the Wall Street Journal reported today that he apparently told his aides he was trying to appear unstable. Well, he succeeded in that. I think we all know he's pretty unstable to begin with, but he was trying to appear unstable as a negotiating tactic. And yet he didn't seem to really scare the Iranians. He did scare his own generals. And so when his own generals are hiding the remote control from him, when his own generals trying to get him out of the room while tough decisions are being made, that's not a good sign. And it's an especially bad sign for the troops who want a commander-in-chief with a plan, want a commander-in-chief who has a way to end this war, not a commander-in-chief who seems to be begging for peace with just different negotiating tactics hour to hour.
Congressman, we're watching two national security fights in Congress. The War Powers Resolution, which Democrats can't get enough of their own, or enough Republicans to break ranks to get it across the finish line. And then FISA, which 20 Republicans have defected and are calling for reforms. What are the reforms that are necessary to be agreed upon within Congress, within the House, for the new FISA to pass?
Well, it's kind of amazing because we have these strange bedfellows where the most conservative, extremist Republicans are siding with the Democrats on these reforms, but sometimes it seems like the most extreme Republicans, a la Marjorie Taylor Greene, are the only ones with the courage to actually stand up to the president. And the basic problem here is that the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which basically gathers intelligence on enemies of the United States who happen to have their communications go through U.S. servers, but also tends to scoop up data from Americans as well. The problem is that this has actually been used quite effectively to stop terrorist attacks on the United States, to help us deal with some serious national security threats from people all over the globe. And when you spend time in classified spaces like I do, you see the benefits of this law. But the reality is that there are not enough safeguards to prevent it from being used against Americans. In fact, there are examples where we've seen rogue FBI agents try to find information about bad relationships or family members or whatnot through this service. And at least we were able to come to some compromises in the past where we put enough guardrails around it under the Biden administration and under the Obama administration to trust that it would be reasonably well adjudicated. But that's no longer the case because even Republicans don't trust this administration to keep out of their business. They've weaponized and politicized every arm of law enforcement, not just ICE, but the FBI. I mean, just sitting here as a Democratic congressman, I have to think that the FBI, that the Department of Justice might be weaponizing some of these tools against me because I'm seen as a political opponent. Donald Trump called me a total loser the other day, and that means I'm on his radar screen, right? So this is the concern that people on actually both sides of the aisle really have, is that we just cannot fundamentally trust the administration to follow guidelines written into law, and therefore we need to really tighten the guidelines before we give this bill a chance of going forward.
Congressman, speaking of things that your Republican colleagues have done this week, I thought it was pretty striking that earlier this week, the House passed a resolution through a discharge petition to extend temporary protected status protections for the 350,000 Haitians who are in this country, whom Donald Trump or his administration had tried to end protections for. So for those watching, this means these are people who had temporary legal status. These are people who had the ability to apply for a legal work permit. Donald Trump tried to take that away from them. And there were 10 Republicans in the House, including one of the co-sponsors of the bill, Mike Lawler, who decided to vote to protect this population, this demographic, which I thought was pretty striking. It's a very unusual rebuke, in a way, of a Trump administration immigration policy. What do you make of that? Do you think that this is any sort of inflection point, particularly given that the public has been so down on Trump's immigration policies, or am I reading too much into this action?
Sadly, I think you're reading too much into it. I would love to believe that. I would love to believe that they're waking up to the fact that Haiti is a disaster, that when the Trump administration's own State Department comes out with a prohibition on travel to Haiti because it's so dangerous for American citizens, then obviously that justifies that's the whole point for why we have temporary protected status, for not sending Haitian immigrants back into this hellhole. And if you think about it, TPS has been in place for Haiti for a long time, because Haiti has been a mess for a long time, really ever since the earthquake back in 2010. And as a result of that, there are a lot of great Haitians working in the United States today who've had children. So imagine being a 6 or 7 year old Haitian American little girl who suddenly is told by this administration that you're being sent not back, but sent to a country that you've never even known, that your parents happen to be born in, but all you've ever known as a 7-year-old kid is the United States of America. This is where your friends are. This is where your school is. This is where your parents work and earn a living and pay taxes, by the way. And all of a sudden, the Trump administration comes in and said, nope, go fend for yourself on the streets of Port-au-Prince, 7-year-old, a city that we have declared completely unsafe for Americans to travel to. I mean, it's just fundamentally immoral. So yes, you would like to think that the Republicans are doing the right thing and recognizing that they have 7-year-old Haitian American kids in their communities. But I think what they're really realizing is that they have a lot of old Republicans in nursing homes. And a lot of old Republicans in nursing homes are taken care of by these Haitian Americans, by these Haitian immigrants who do the tough work that many Americans, Native Americans, are not willing to do. And they're really good at it. And they're really essential in our community. And you go to nursing homes all across Massachusetts, all across New York, where Lawler is from, and you see a lot of Haitian immigrants doing this tough, important work, taking care of senior citizens, taking care of maybe Mike Lawler's parents are in one of these homes. I don't know. But I think that's the reality that's hitting home. And so don't give them too much credit for doing the right thing here. Don't give them too much credit for not being hypocrites and actually listening to their own State Department. I think they just realized that a lot of Republicans in senior homes right now would be out of luck if these Haitians were forced to leave.
Congressman Seth Moulin, it's always great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for making time for us tonight, sir.
Absolutely. Great to see you.